Over here, as we cross over this railroad track, as we go over, we are leaving Cashmere Garden, and we're going into the first place that blacks start buying property here, and that's Trinity Garden. Trinity Garden and Sunnyside and Acres Home have always been predominantly black. And this is some of the first property that blacks was buying out here in Trinity Garden. And this is where they growed all the watermelons, all the cantaloupes, you name it. Everybody out here was farmers. That's why you got all these big land in the back of this property. See all of that land in the back? See all of that land in the back? Because everybody out here has their own garden. They raised their own hogs, their own cows, chickens, you name it. They had it out here. See how deep these lots are? And I will show you. All of this was considered as Trinity Garden. And just what blacks was moving at out here in Trinity Garden. And blacks was out here way before they was in Fifth Ward. A lot of blacks that moved out here in Trinity Garden, they came from Fifth Ward because they wanted to farm and have built their own businesses. And they were selling the land out here in Trinity Garden real cheap. And all of this was considered as Trinity Garden, and this is where they raised their own crops. They grow their own corn, their own sweet potatoes, you name it, black-eyed peas. They raised their own beans out here, pinto beans. They had a farmers out here. This was a farmers market. Well, most of these people out here was farmers. Once they got so much crop, they went and sold that crop. That's right. These was farmers out here in Trinity Garden. And this have always been black. This, Sunnyside, and Acres Home have always been black. See how long those lots are? Look at that. See how long that lot is? That's the plantation. That's the doggone farm right there. After you have so many acres, you consider it as a farmland. And all of these people had farmland. See how big those lots are? These not your average lots you see in 3rd Ward. In 4th Ward, no. We're going to turn down the street called Weaver Road, which is also part of Trinity Garden. All of this was predominantly black area. And Trinity Garden was known for having the best watermelons in the state of Texas. That's right. People from Hempstead used to come way out here to Trinity Garden and get watermelons. That's how sweet they watermelons was back in the 30s and the 40s. Before Houston annexed this in the 40s, this was considered a garden town. That's why they named it Cashmere Garden. Garden mean gardens. That mean they had their own farmland back up in here. They grew everything. Everything you see in the produce, from cabbage to lettuce, they was growing it out here in Trinity Garden. Look how deep those lots are. Look. All of this, and we going down Weaver Road. All of this was Trinity Garden, which was always predominantly black, and it's still predominantly black. And it's two places right now is that you consider as predominantly black today, and have always been black: Trinity Garden and Sunnyside. Because Acres Home, you got a lot of Spanish people moving out to Acres Home. But Trinity Garden, and we're going down here because you had 3 major streets that goes through Trinity Garden, Cashmere Garden, and 5th Ward. You had Lockwood on one side, you have Hirsch on the other side, and of course you have Jensen Drive on the other side. And those are the 3 major streets that ran from 5th Ward to Cashmere Garden up into Trinity Garden, even into Scenic Wood. But right now we're going about Trinity Garden. See how large these lots are? Look at it. Look how wide these lots, man. You cannot only have a garden. This is long enough for you to have a farm. If you bought this property right now, you could be a farmland. You could call for farm. And see, you had horses. They didn't have no cars out here in the night. They didn't get cars out here in Trinity Garden until the late 30s. Before then, there was horses and buggies and mules. I'm telling you the truth. And outhouses. They didn't have no city. That's why they annexed it. That's why the people in Trinity Garden and Cashmere Garden wanted to get annexed to Houston so they could have the city benefits. That means the water and the pickup trash. All of this was considered as Trinity Garden. Now, as we go down here in the Trinity Garden, we're going down Hirsch Road. And one of the major streets out here was Lockwood. And I would say probably in the late 70s, Cashmere and the people in Cashmere and Trinity Garden need a middle school. And that's when they came up with Key Middle School, which was Key Junior High School. And that's when they built a new Cashmere Senior High School. Right here off of Lockwood and Bennington. And when they moved to Cashmere, the original name of Cashmere High School was called Cashmere Garden Rams. But since they moved out here to Trinity Garden, they had to stop and cut off the Cashmere Garden. That's why Cashmere is the only school that's named after a community, which is Cashmere Garden Community. And as we go and turn here off of Shreveport until Bennington here, and now you can see there's Cashmere High School. When they first gave the school to blacks in 1957, because the white people didn't want it, it was located right there on the corner of Hirsch and Kelly Street. And then in the late 70s, they built another Cashmere out here in Trinity Garden for the kids that was already coming out here in Trinity Garden because they was going so far to go to high school. So they built them a school out here for them. But they had to drop the Cashmere Garden name, and they just called it Cashmere Rams. And that's the name of it today. But as you can see, all of this used to be farmland. All these people was farmers. They worked for a living. They worked growing their crops, selling their crops on the weekend. They got all up and down in their wagon, going through the neighborhood selling lettuce, tomatoes, onions, potatoes, sweet potatoes, watermelon, you name it. Cause see, it wasn't these people didn't have no horses. I mean, they didn't have no cars back in the day in the early 20s and 30s. Even when Houston annexed it, very few blacks out here had cars in the 40s. Most of these people had wagons where they would be able to go up and down the neighborhood selling their crops. And then they would also raise their chickens and hogs, which they would slaughter. And one thing about the people in Trinity Garden, they were never scared to work. If you want to see some hard-working people, you came out here to Trinity Garden. See how that lot is? See how deep that lot is? Everybody out here had a garden in the back of their yard. Back in the 40s and the 50s, everybody out here you see had a garden. Look how deep that lot is. See how big that lot is? That's because they grew their own crops out here. They didn't have to go to the store to buy nothing. In fact, they went to the store to sell something. Some of their crops. All they couldn't sell at the stores, they would go in the neighborhoods and sell it. Some of them would have the vegetables at their house and people would come to their house and buy it. This have always been a real tight community. Trinity Garden. Houston, Texas, we were so honored to have Trinity Garden, and what y'all annexed Trinity Garden and Cashmere Garden in the 40s, it was a blessing for Houston and the whole north side to be able to have these two communities come together and be part of Houston. And Houston annexed this in the early 1940s. Before then, they were twin countries, country towns. They weren't cities, they were country towns. And they was called Garden Town. One for white folks was called Cashmere Garden. The one for black folks was called Trinity Garden. See how deep those lots are? Look at it. Look at it. You can grow a bunch of plants, a bunch of fruits and vegetables out here in these lots. Look at these lots, y'all. Think how many high risers they would be putting out here if this wasn't all blacks. Because you're not going to buy this kind of land up there in Third Ward. That's why the majority of people that was coming from the little small country town, when they came to Houston, they came out here to live on the north side of Houston because the north side reminded them of their hometown. Little small places like Brookshire, Sealy, all the little small country towns, all up in Huntsville. All of them, when they came to Houston, to live in Houston, they wanted to stay on the north side because the north side of Houston remind them of their home where they come from, which was a small country town. And right there was Cashmere High School. And when they built that, and built it out here in Trinity Garden, they had to keep the name Cashmere, but they had to drop the garden off of it. But they kept the same mascot, the Rams, and they changed the colors. Yeah, that's the reality for all you people out here in Cashmere and Trinity Garden, and for the Trinity Garden Facebook page. We love y'all, man. We proud. We're actually proud of Trinity Garden, baby. Trinity Garden is Houston proud, man, because this is the original black folks. And you know what? They never changed. They never moved out. No, these are roots, man. These are black roots right out here in Trinity Garden. See, Third Ward was for white folks and Jews. And we know Fourth Ward was for white folks because that's what Freedom Town is. And Fifth Ward was for white folks. So don't get it twisted. Black folks just moved out there and moved the white folks out of Fifth Ward, moved them out of Third Ward. But out here in Trinity Garden have always been blacks. In Trinity Garden, Cashmere High School, on the behalf of Chief Dowling and all the members out here in Cashmere High School, we proud. Where can you find other high schools in the city of Houston that has a statue of Conrad Johnson? We don't even have a statue of J. Yates in Third Ward. But the people in Cashmere Garden and Trinity Garden, they got together. All right, welcome to Cashmere Senior High School. There's the statue of the late but never forgotten Conrad Johnson. Like I said, out of all the 5 black high schools, original black high schools here in Houston, Texas, Cashmere is the only school that has a statue to represent a black person. And that's Conrad Johnson, and that's at Cashmere Rams High School. As you look at the statue of Conrad Johnson, a band director. That's right, his whole family, his daddy was the first band director at Jack Yates in 19. Conrad Johnson, as we look at the statue of Conrad Johnson, he was the first band director here at Cashmere High School. He the one formed the Cashmere Stage Band that was known all over the world. That's right, the Cashmere Stage Band was known all over the world, not just in the United States, all over the world, because Conrad Johnson took them there. And that's why you hear a statue.